Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and good evening to everyone.
Waalaikumsalam, sir.
Guys,
Good evening.
how are you guys tonight? So far, so good.
Yes, sir.
Good,
So
sir.
far, so good, sir.
Saya dengar suara cengkerik tu. Nur dan Nisha. Thank you. Alright, so today we have a replacement class, and inshallah today I would like to share with you guys for the second last chapter for this subject, international management. And if you look at from this slide, chapter 10, and the title is about developing a global management cadre. So still, if you still remember, the terms for the cadre is about the professional team. The HR try to groom that teams become a for international management or international level. Okay, that's for the how to develop a global management cadre. Okay, these are the tips for the organization, especially if you want to go for the international or global business. All right. So if you look at from here, we have five. Okay, five chapter learning goals. We start with the first two chapter learning goals from this chapter. The first one is to appreciate, okay, the importance of international assignments in developing top managers with global experience and perspective. Okay, so we try to appreciate, and then we try to look at what are the important things, okay, for the international assignments. Okay, especially if you want, if the organization trying to look at for the international or global business, and then how to develop for the top managers, okay, or we can call as a cadre with a global experience and perspectives. Okay, so how to develop? We must have a training. Okay, that's the first chapter that goes from this chapter. The second one is to recognize the need to design program for the careful preparation, adaptation, and repatriation of the expatriate and any accompanying family, as well as program for career management and retention, thereby also transferring knowledge to and from host operation. Okay, we try to recognize what are the we must put in, okay, what are the need, okay, to design the program, especially for this cadre, to in terms of the careful preparation before we send that staff to go for the international level, and then what are the adaptation factors or adaptation things we must to adapt for the training, okay, for the program and so on. And at the same time about the repatriation. Okay, repatriation, if you still remember, we go to that staff for the international level, and then they come back to the home country, and then they go for another country or the same country after maybe 5 years, the long term, and then for the short term maximum until 11 month or 12 month. Okay, then the third chapter then goes from this chapter is to become familiar with the use of global management teams, okay, to coordinate host country and cross-border business. Okay, after we know what are the best program, what we must put in inside the program and so on. So right now we try to look at try to familiar, okay, with the use of global management teams, especially for the cadre, to coordinate for the host country, especially for the host country they don't have any skilled person or experienced person. So we need to send the cadre or the global management team to have a manager for the international or host country and cross-border business, especially for the global business. Right. The next chapter learning goals, if you look at from here, number 4, to recognize the varying roles, okay, of women around the world in international management. Okay, this is about another issue, okay, for especially for the international, as I mentioned last week, yesterday class about the gender, okay, because a lot of cadre manager or cadre management or team, international team, from the a guy person or a man person. So right now we try to look at how to recognize the varying roles, okay, especially for women around the world for the international management. Okay, that's another issue we try to look at in terms of this chapter. And the final one, not number 3, number 5 should be, okay, to understand the variation in host country labor relations systems and the impact of the manager's job and effectiveness. So we try to understand what are the variation in host country labor relation system. So when we talk about labor relation system is regarding for the HR part, okay, human resource or the labor law, okay, what are the, because as we know different countries they have a different law, especially for the labor things. And then from here, actually, there might be give some impact, okay, on the manager's job and effectiveness. Some the labor relation system is if that system is good, okay, so of course the manager become more effectiveness. So if let's say that management or the system that's very lack or not good enough in terms of their system, so of course there being a ineffectiveness for that managers. Okay, so that's the 5 chapter and goals we're going to learn from this chapter. So we start with the opening profile, the expat or expatriate life. Okay, so most company actually with global business transaction want their top employees to have overseas experience. Okay, so if you talk about their overseas experience, of course this is under the cut rate. And then we have the example of the company under P&G or Procter and Gamble. Actually, they have around 39 of the 44 global officer have had and international assignments, and 22 were born outside the US, according to the 2015 Brookfield Relocation Trend Survey, okay, of 143 firms. And then 43% of assignees actually were relocated to or from a non-headquarters country. Okay, this is based on the P&G situation. And then in many circumstances, the adventure, which started out with many concerns, turns out to be one that the expats and their families do not want to end. And then according to the GMAC, okay, GMAC Global Relocation Survey, 26% of expatriates actually option, okay, to continue their overseas assignments when the original teams end. So means based on this research, around 26%, not so many or not so high percentage, okay, they are trying to what we call it, continue for this kind of the teams or cut rate team or international teams. So might have the problem in terms of the culture or language or something like that in terms of that issue, or maybe culture shock. Okay, so when we talk about the expatriate life, is it an adventure or hardship? Okay, some of the manager maybe they think this is more adventure because you learn a new thing. Okay, especially in terms of the environment, parcel, language or culture and other things, or become a hardship because they become a hardship, especially if they go for the culture shock, or maybe they can't relate or they can't what we call it accept any changes, okay, in terms of the different culture or different environment and so on. They being a hardship. Okay, so depends on, for the individual. That's why we need to have a training, okay, for this kind of the cut rate or international team to make sure for them they become a motivation or become the adventure, okay, to improve their skill and so on. Okay, and then for the experiences of those who have done a stay abroad are mixed. Okay, the experiences vary by job type and especially by location. And then adjustment is easier for those who go to places where the culture and business practices are similar. Okay, if they are very unsimilar, of course, they're being a hardship for them. So most expect or expatriate the assignments to be, or the expectation, okay, the assignments to be career broadening. Okay, they maybe have a good in terms of the broad, okay, for their career development and so on. Okay, this is about the expatriate life. If you look at from this slide. Right, so we start with the first chapter learning goals to appreciate the importance of international assignments in the developing top managers with global experience and perspectives. So we go another the expatriate life, but the expatriate life after we look at in terms of the real situation happen for the expatriate life. So right now we have another expatriate life could include a nanny, driver, or even a bodyguard. Okay, this is about the expatriate life. And then tax-free income and the round trips home every year. Okay, this is about the written language classes, especially for those country they need to learn about their language. And then fees for private school. This is for their kids and their children's. And then being let off in a foreign country. So this is another expatriate life we must facing. And then 20%, as I mentioned previously, of expatriate actually option to continue their overseas assignments. Okay, just 20%. The rest, they don't want to continue. Okay, right. So these are the essential of IHRM. So still we learn about a little bit about the IHRM factor, because especially for the labor system, or labor law system and so on. So if you look at from here, they maximize long-term retention and use of international cadre through career management to develop a top management team with global experience. Okay, this is the first essential of IHRM. The first purpose why we must do a training, especially with trying to develop this kind of the cadre. Okay, that's the first one. Try to maximize long-term retention. And then the second one is develop effective global management team. This is the second purpose, the second essential for IHRM. And then the third one is trying to understand the value and promote, the role of women in international management to maximize those you underutilize resources. Sometimes we need skill from women, because sometimes, as we know, they have a different character in terms of the manager for the women and man or guy, something like that. So sometimes we need the skill from women to what we call it, to solve any issues related for the host country or other country or global country, something like that. Okay, so this is another essential of IHRM. And then the final one is work with the host country labor relation system, as I mentioned, to help implementation and employee productivity. Okay, different country or different host country, they have a different labor relation system. Okay, so these are the essential of IHRM. Okay, so far any question before we move to the second chapter, learning goals?
No, sir.
No, sir.
No question? Okay, thank you for the feedback. So we move to the second chapter, learning goals. To recognize the need to design program for the careful preparation, adaptation, and repatriation of the expatriate and any accompanying family, as well as program for career management and retention, thereby also transferring knowledge to and from host operations. Okay, so this is part under IHRM, actually, our International Human Resource Management. Yeah. So expatriate career management, if you look at from here, when we talk about for the expatriate or cadre or international what we call it, assignments. Okay, so they must have do a preparation, adaptation, and repatriation. Okay, preparation means before we send that staff to go for the international level, and then after they go for that program, they trying to adapt. Okay, adapt what are the best program we can offer to the expatriate, and then at the same time for repatriation. So after they finish for the term, after 1 year, 2 years, or 5 years maximum, and then they come back, and then they can solve another issue for another host country. That's we call it for the repatriation. That's the first expatriate care management. And then after that, the role of the expatriate spouse. Okay, this is for especially for the staff they are already married. Okay, what about their role being a expatriate spouse? And then expatriate retention. Okay, this is another expatriate career management. So after they come back, after they finish the term and so on, so how about their expatriate retention? Okay, they're trying to look at all this one. Okay, preparation before they go, and then adaptation during that assignments, and then the repatriation after they come back and then they want to go for another country or maybe the same country for another task or job. And then being a spouse, especially for those who are married, actually they have their own role. And the next one for the expatriate retention for each expatriate. Okay, so they're trying to look at in terms of this one for their career management. Okay, next we have the preparation. Okay, we start for one by one for the preparation, adaptation, and repatriation. So reverse culture shock occurs because reintegration is difficult, and then the expatriate are often out of sight, out of mind, and then feelings of alienation from home, especially if they go for the if you still remember, they got 4 phases under the culture shock. Yesterday we learned about that phases. If you look at from that phase of the culture shock, okay, they're trying to being a honeymoon, and then they have something like retention, and then the second one they try to what we call it graduate, okay, because they already understand about the different culture and so on, and then the final one about the biculture, if you still remember about that. So if you look at from this one, is reverse culture. After 5 years, they go for the international level, and after that, they come back. Sometimes their system, okay, or the certain things there might be changed because you already adopt about that culture. So that's why feeling of alienation from home culture or home country. Okay, this is, we call it reverse culture shock occurs because of these things. And then the second one is poor management of expatriate. Sometimes the organization, or especially for the HR department, they have a poor program or poor management for expatriate program. So means fewer will be willing to take assignments. Okay, this is another part under the preparation, adaptation, and repatriation during the international assignments or expatriate. So if you look at from these two issues or two things under the preparation, adaptation, and repatriation, they actually the ability to develop a global management team depends largely on the success of expatriate assignments. So which is then depend on the ability to manage transition for the expatriate and accompanying family members, especially for those who are married. And then effective management of a company, a global cut rate, okay, does not end with the overseas assignments. So it ends with a successful repatriation. So they come back and then they go back. Okay, this is about the successful for the repatriation program. And then proactive management should begin with the end of the current assignments in mind. So unfortunately, many companies actually do little to minimize the effect of reverse culture shock or plan for repatriation once assignment is over. Okay, this is very crucial issues actually. So it is unsurprisingly unsurprising because then that the U.S. account employees, for example, currently see overseas assignment a negative career move. So if managers lose out on promotion opportunity while overseas, few will be willing to take foreign assignments. Okay, not all. That's right, just 26%. So at least if you have good in terms of the program or the career development for this kind of the expatriate international assignment, actually they can have at least 50%. Okay, they can what we call it rejoin that this kind of the career or international assignments, international profession, okay, team to make sure they can solve any problem, and then at the same time they can being a global mindset for that stuff. Okay, so far so good.
Okay, sir.
Okay, nice.
Yes, sir.
Right, thank you for the feedback. So next, HRM or human resource management practices most frequently associate with successful repatriation. So these are the practices or the activities under HRM, actually they are most frequently associated with the successful programs repatriation. So that's why the program design must be looked at very thoroughly, very careful, okay, to make sure they become a successful repatriation. Okay, so visible signs that the company values international experience. Okay, so after they come back, of course, they can share about the experience for that environment, okay, in terms of the PASO, how to solve the issues or problems facing in that host country. So this is visible sign that the company values, okay, they can have the value added from that cut rate actually. And then the second one is career planning session. Okay, again, they mentioned about the planning session or the program for that expatriate. And then communication with HQ about repatriation process. So when you talk about HQ, means the support program or design program from HQ or headquarters or home country. Actually, they are very, very important, okay, in terms of the communication, in terms of the information and so on, to make sure that process or repatriation process begin successful. Okay, and then continuous communication with the HQ. Okay, this is another part, especially if they come with a different issue. Sometimes they can send or inform that issue to the HQ, especially for the HR in HQ, okay, to solve the problem, and then at the same time they try to prepare, okay, to make something like another training for that cut rate to make sure this, if that issue happen again, so how to solve this kind of the issue, okay. And the final one, agreement about position upon repatriation. So this is about the contract or agreement, both from the company and also from that staff, that expatriate or cadre, their position after they are come back. Because as we know, if they go for the international level, their position in home country, of course, they are replaced with the other person. So after they come back, so how about their position? This is another thing for the HR must look at it, okay, carefully to make sure this program of repatriation being successful. Okay, so later on, maybe you work with the HRM department or HRM, what we call it, being a manager of the HR, okay, and then you working with the MNC or MNE company, so you must handle this kind of the program design, okay, especially for the expatriate or cadre. All right, so next, elements of successful repatriation program. So if you look at from here, another things we must look at in terms of very careful to make sure this repatriation program being successful, support to those overseas. Okay, means from the host country also they have the support. Okay, maybe in terms of the training, in terms of the, if you still remember last week, okay, we have the example of the program happened to the organization. They have the, what we call it, orientation, especially for the new staff and so on. So this is support to those overseas. And then careful career planning. This is under HR. They must design a good career planning to this expatriate. And then using the increased experience and skill of returnees. So means here, if you send that international staff or that staff being an expatriate, they must to come back and then they must sharing all the information, all the knowledge, all the skills together with the home country or that country staff to make sure they being another value added for the organization. Okay, so these are the elements, okay, of successful repatriation program. So if they have this kind, at least 3 things, of course, that repatriation program being successful. Okay, so companies actually need to make the foreign assignment and reintegration process positive by using careful career planning, providing support to those overseas, as I mentioned, and then using the increased experience and skill of returnees to the benefit of the home office to feel a part of home organization. This is very important, especially for the HR, and then for the HQ or support from the top management from the HQ or headquarters. Okay, so far so good.
Good, sir.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you for the feedback. So we move to the next slide, the role of expatriate spouse. Okay, this is especially for those who are married. So these are their role being a husband or wife. Okay, especially if that program or that expatriate being a long term, at least 1 year to maximum 5 years. Okay, they have their own role. Okay, if you look at from here, employment status. Okay, half of expatriate spouses are employed before the assignments. So means even they are married and then their husband, okay, for example, their husband working in this organization, and then of course their spouse working in other organization. So that's why half of expatriate actually they have spouses are employed before the assignment. So but only 11% are employed during the assignment. If you look at from this kind of the situation. So how to solve this one? Of course, if their spouse need to go together with that husband or wife for the international assignment, they must left or they must take something like what we call it, they got some scheme for the organization, take on leave without salary. I think something like that, because in UniKL we offered that kind of the program. Okay, especially for those their husband or wife, they're going for international and then they want to bring together with their spouse and their kids and so on. So they just go to that country and then that company, wife or husband company, they just gave for 1 year until 2 years. Okay, that's for the UniCare. So depends on the organization. Some organization they don't have this kind of the program. Okay, some organization, of course, they have the program. So after they come back, so that spouse, actually they got to reposition in that organization. So this is another role of the expatriate spouse. Yeah. So Spouse adjustment, more likely intercompany networking to find spouse position. Okay. Sometimes the program, if they send that stuff to the international level or doing the international assignments, okay, actually they can give some position to their spouse together. So this is another program, the best or brilliant program under the HR department. So another thing is maybe personal concern and future career. So this is another judgment they must look at in terms of this one. So at least they got the experience for the international, even they just what we call it, follow the husband or their wife doing the international assignments. Okay, that's the role of the expatriate spouse. Either they're what we call it, join together in that organization, in that assignment, so they get another position to that spouse, or maybe they can being a future career for their career development. Okay, so far so good.
Yes, sir.
Right, thank you for the feedback. So the next one, expatriate retention. Okay, this is the about the why they must do a retention, especially for the expatriate and for those who already go for the international assignment. Okay, so exit from the home country, of course, the quality of the preparation. Okay, they look at in terms of the preparation, in terms of the training, in terms of the what we call it, the package or program package the organization provided. This is under exit from the home country. If they go for the international assignments or international company, for example, to do the any tasks and so on, so they look at in terms of this one, the quality of preparation. And then the next expatriate retention, because of the entry to the host country, okay, monitoring and support. So what are the monitoring system and how about their host country support or home country support or top management support? Okay, if they have good in terms of the support, in terms of this kind of the program, of course, they are being a good or successful program. If not, they are being a failure. Okay, and then the next one is entry back to the home country after finish the assignment or finish the contract for that international assignments. They come back. This is about the reverse culture shock, depends on preparation and support. Sometimes because of 5 years, you already go to that country and then you come back, you feel something like you being an alien. Okay, this is another culture shock happen. Okay, so the overall transition process experience, okay, by a company international management cut rate over time comprises 3 phases of transition and adjustment that must be managed. Okay, as I mentioned, the first phase is exit from the home country, okay, which is the success of which is largely determined by quality of preparation the expatriate has received. And then the second phase is entry into the host country or culture, which is also comprised of entry, adjustment, and exit. So the success of this phase actually depends largely on monitoring and support system. Okay, and then the final one, the third phase, is re-entry into the home country or entry into a new host country, in which the level of reverse culture shock and the years of acculturation will depend on the previous stages of preparation and support. So again, they mention about the preparation. Okay, we talk about preparation in terms of the training, okay, in terms of the system, in terms of the program for that expatriate. Okay, the next one, expatriate handle with care. Okay, so how we can handle this kind of the expatriate? Okay, because expatriate actually we need this kind of the stuff, because after they come back they can bring something of being a value added for the organization. So how to handle with care this expatriate staff? Okay, expatriate are highly marketable and receive more attractive offer from other employers. Okay, actually other employers or other organization, they try to look at in terms of that cut rate or that stuff, because they are being a global minded and then they have the international assignments. Okay, so please be careful. Please handle the expatriate. That's why the contract is very important for this kind of the program. And then overseas compensation package are more generous than those at home. So means after they go to the host country, actually their salary, their allowance, their support system, anything in the host country, there are more benefits rather than home country. So this for the HR, they must look at in terms of this one. Okay, to make sure that staff they must come back to home to that company because we need their expertise. Okay, and then expatriates feel unappreciated at home and on assignments. So this is another things about their program, expatriate program. This is another part. Yeah, we must look at very careful because sometimes they go for the international level and they feel that host country or that country, another country, they are offered more and then they are more appreciate about the task, about that stuff and so on, rather than home country. So of course, they're being a failure for this kind of the program. Okay, so no one can better look out for one interest than oneself. So expatriate actually must ask themselves and their superiors what a role each of assistant will play in career advancement and what proactive role each will play in one's own career. Okay, so however, unless the company is effective at managing the career of successful expatriates, and then it may lose valuable employees. Okay, so carefully managing the career of expatriate can help a company retain people with increasing global experience and skills. So the Global Relocation Trends Survey finds several reasons for high expatriate turnover rates. So means they don't want to come back in their home country. They feel because of this one. Expatriate are more marketable, and then expatriate find their compensation package and overseas assignment more generous things. And then the third one is expatriate feel unappreciated. Okay, appreciate things from the home country. So these are the three main issues based on the research. Okay, about the expatriate turnover. Why the expatriate they don't want to come back? Okay, so far so good.
Good, sir.
Right. Actually, tonight we don't have the short break. We try to finish early because some of the students got some things, some tasks or some activities for tonight. So we try to finish early. Yeah. Right. So next, about the role of repatriation in developing a global cadre. So if we look at from here, what are the role of repatriation? Successful expatriate acquire skills. Okay. So being a expatriate, you must have this kind of the skills. Okay, managerial skill, how to manage, and then tolerance for ambiguity because about the system and everything change, everything different, and so on. So how to being a tolerance for ambiguity. And then next, multiple perspectives. Okay, you must have a not only focus for that perspective, you must have multiple. Okay, depends on the situation because different country or different host country they have different problems and the ability to work with and manage others. Okay, this is another skill you must have being a expatriate. Okay, so if you don't have this kind of the expat skill and so on, so please try to find these skills. Okay, to make sure you are being successful. Okay, leading company we have the GE. Okay, GE example of the company, and then best practices what they have done do start repatriation program before the assignments. Okay, so means here before they send their staff to that international level or international assignments, okay, they are start for the repatriation program. They look at in terms of this repatriation program, and then shared learning among global manager. Okay, so means after you go for the international level and then you come back and then you must share what you have done, learn what the knowledge, the new thing you learn from that country with the others. Okay, being a global managers and in a culture that values international experience as part of career path. Okay, this is for GE company. They do about this kind of the practices, and then they being a developing a global cadre for their company. Okay, so if you look at in terms of the skills, okay, as I mentioned about the first skill, managerial skill, actually, this managerial skill is not like the technical skill, about the learning how to deal with a wide range of people to adapt to their culture through compromise and then and not to be a dictator. Okay, this is, we call it for the managerial skill. And then for the second one, tolerance for ambiguity, actually making decision with less information and more uncertainty about the process and the outcome. And then the ability to work with, manage other, learning patience and tolerance, or realizing that managers abroad are in the minority among local people, and then learning to communication or communicate, okay, more with other and empathize with them. Okay, so in addition, expatriate learn how to do business overseas and about new technology, local marketing, and competitive information. Okay, so companies actually must position themselves to benefit from the enhanced knowledge expatriate managers develop. And then if a company cannot retain good returning managers, then its potential shared knowledge is not only lost, but also conveyed to other companies that hire them. Okay, so that's the skill you must have for the expatriate, and then what the preparation you must do as being in the organization. Okay, so far so good.
Good, sir.
Good. All right, we move to the next slide. Variables influencing success of knowledge transfer from repatriate manager. Okay, this is about the knowledge transfer after they being 1 year or 5 years go for the international assignment and come back. Okay, how they can share the knowledge. Okay, or maybe because the expertise only for that stuff, and then they go for the host country, and then how they can share their knowledge to that host country. Okay, this is the variables if you look at from here. The first variable influencing success is about knowledge acquired. Okay, so what types of the knowledge you must need it, okay, to being a expatriate. And then retention of manager in firm, and then managers willingness to share. Sometimes they have the expert, they have the knowledge, but they don't have the willingness to share. They don't want to share about their knowledge. Okay, these are the variable influencing successful. If they don't want to share their knowledge, of course they're being unsuccessful for this kind of the repatriate manager program. Okay, and then the next variables influencing success of the knowledge transfer from repatriate manager, also in terms of the firm value placed on knowledge transfer. Okay, this is about the value, okay, for the from the firm. Sometimes they not have a good acceptance from the knowledge transfer and so on, so they're being unsuccessful. Okay, if they have good value placed on that knowledge, so they're being a success. And the organizational knowledge transfer process, how about the process? Okay, maybe some of the organization, they have the system and so on, the process to transfer the knowledge from A to Z, or the A to B, something like that, depends the process. Yeah, and then the level of integration of knowledge, and then repatriate manager knowledge management or organizational value added, as I mentioned, because we sometimes we send the staff for the international assignment because they have the expertise, they have the knowledge. At the same time, after they go for the international assignments, after they do about the international assignment, they can share something the different what they can grab from that host country and then bring to the home country. Okay, that's the variable influencing success. So based on the experience, based on the expatriate, actually sometimes the expatriate have the knowledge and so on, but they don't want to share. Okay, they're being something like, oh, I learned from myself, so I don't want to share. So being unsuccessful for this kind of program. That's why the agreement they must have. Okay, because everything, all the what we call it, the details about the agreement inside the agreement is very careful. Look at it. Okay, and then we have the next example, the real example under the lens here, expatriate carriers add to knowledge. Okay, so Casio Khalil returned to Sao Paulo to head up JP Morgan Asset Management. Okay, this is the first example of the company, if you look at from here. And then expatriate returning to Libya after Gaddafi, hoping business would improve. And then Fly Jeans in Japan after disaster in 2011 because of the earthquake and tsunami. Okay, So this is the Expatriate Career Act knowledge. So how they can, what we call it, solve the issue, okay, solve the any related issue based on the that host country happen. Okay. Next, we move to the global management team. Okay, a collection of managers in from several countries who must rely on group collaboration. Okay, and then we'll pull international. We have US, Dutch, JW with administrative HQ in Italy, and the management team we have Swedish, Italian, Dutch, American, Belgian, and German. Okay, this is about the Whirlpool International, and then teams must provide the means to communicate corporate culture, develop a global perspective, coordinate and integrate the global enterprise, and be responsive to local market needs. So if you look at from this situation, there are more two based on the global training. If you still remember, yesterday we learned about the approach, right? And then about the content of the training and so on. So this is about the content under the global content. If you still remember, yesterday we learned about that for approach. Okay. So far so good.
Yes, sir.
Okay. We move to the next slide. Operational challenges for global virtual teams. Okay, this is for by using the internet or virtual teams. So what are the challenge we must face if you go for the virtual teams challenges? The first one is geographic dispersal, the complexity of scheduling communication across multiple time zone. Okay, about the time different, and then holiday. Sometimes, especially in Malaysia, we have a lot of holiday or public holiday. Sometimes in the US, they just have maybe 1 year, 5 to 10 holiday, public holiday, especially just for Christmas. But in Malaysia, because we have the varieties of culture, we have a lot. Okay, for 1 year, I think more than 50 public holiday. Okay, Hari Malaysia, and then the festival, and then what else? The a lot of public holiday. So this being a challenges for doing a virtual, because different country they have a different things. And then the second one is culture differences, variation in attitudes and expectation. Okay, about the attitude, for example, in terms of the punctuality, about the time or punctual. Sometimes they have a different for US, Japan, Korea. This is very punctual. Okay, but in Malaysia, as we know, if our meeting around 8:30, I think after 9:30 we have another entrance. This is about the attitudes, okay? Them being a challenges. And then the next one is technology, okay? Variation in availability, speed, and acceptability, and so on. Okay, this is in terms of the technology. Sometimes the IT, okay, some of the country they got already 5G. Even in Malaysia right now, we try to groom for 5G technology. But in Korea, I think they are very fast in terms of their, I think right now 7 point something G. Okay, in Korea they're very fast. Okay, so different countries they have different this kind of the technology, especially for the internet provider. Okay, and the last one, the last challenges for virtual teams in terms of the language and communication. So some of the country they don't know how to speak in English, so of course they need the translation difficulties. They have the translation in during the in what we call it during the meeting and so on. And then variation in accents. Okay, sometimes the even in pronunciation or the accent by using the English might be different. Okay, for example, okay, we have the accent for Malaysia accent. Malaysia accent. Okay, for the English, and then Indonesia accent. Okay, sometimes they have a difficulty or different accent. Even they still use the English. Okay, and then semantics and also and other things in terms of the language when you talk about language and communication. Okay. Okay. Sometimes. Okay, all right. And another example maybe from India. Okay, in India they still use the English, but their accent not same like us. Okay, they have a different, sometimes the pronouns of the accent that might be different. So this being another virtual teams challenges. Okay, next. We move to the virtual teams future needs. Okay, in terms of the virtual teams, we must need in terms of the how to lead a virtual team meeting. Okay, by using what? Okay, what methods, and then how to coach and mentor virtually, especially for example in this class, open the camera and so on. So how you can coach and mentor with the virtually. Okay, sometimes we can't what we call it. We can't manage this kind of the situation. That's why we need the physical class, because during the classes, the real classes, as a lecturer, they can look at least 180 degrees, okay, based on during the classes. And then how to monitor team progress. Okay, this is another next we must look at it for the virtual teams, about the progress, then how to use communication technologies, and then how to manage team boundaries. Okay, because different countries, they have some boundaries in terms of the language, in terms of the attitude, and other boundaries. Okay, so this is we must look at it if you want to use the virtual team. So before we proceed for the online class, actually the UNICAL must look at in terms of this all the factors. Okay, that's why they do a research. Okay, they do something like try and error. Okay, so and finally right now, until now, we still use the Microsoft Teams. Okay, it's just an example. Right, next, we have the managing transnational team. So how to manage for the transnational? If you look at from here, tasks for global business teams, okay? Cultivating trust among members, and then overcoming communication barrier, aligning goals of individual team members, and then obtaining clarify regarding team objectives, and then ensuring that the team possesses necessary knowledge and skills. Okay, this is how to manage for the transnational team. Okay, because different country, and then we use the virtual. So this is about the task. We must look at it. Cultivating trust. We must have a trust. We give what we call it task and so on, and then we must have trust. So make sure at least they can know they can do by themselves. Okay, to manage or to settle the task and so on. Okay, these are about the task for global business team. So you must look at it for how to manage for the transnational team especially. Okay, so far so good.
Good, sir.
Here. Next, we look at in terms of this managing transnational team, we have the advantages and disadvantages. Okay, for the advantages for managing transnational team is greater opportunity for global competition. Okay, we can compete with the other competitor, especially for the global competitors. And there are opportunities for cross-cultural understanding, because at the same time, we can learn and we can accept with a different culture. Okay, we try to understand with their culture because we expose with their culture. And then exposure to different viewpoints. Okay, as we know, different country, they have a different decision making, different styles and so on. So especially if you are doing the transnational teams, okay, actually we can exposure with a different viewpoint. Maybe in this country there are viewpoints like this. Okay, in Asia country there are viewpoints like that. Okay, and other country their viewpoints they have different. So we expose with different viewpoints. That's the advantages being a managing transnational teams. Okay, for disadvantages is problems resulting from differences in language, especially. Okay, especially for those countries they not prefer to use English language. So there might be a problem. And then complex decision-making process, as we know, when we talk about decision-making process in terms of the country, they are very individualism or collectivism. Individualism, maybe suddenly they have the decision-making. For collectivism, they must do another meeting with their teams, and then they must decide after that. So this is about the complexity of the decision-making process. And then the next disadvantages is about personality conflict. Okay, so this is about personality. I manage it and so on. Okay, if you look at in terms of the culture viewpoints, we look at in terms of the at least half state dimension. Okay, that's about the personality conflict being a disadvantageous. So far, any question?
No, sir.
No, sir.
All right, thank you for the feedback. So we move to the next slide, slide number 25. We have another around 13 slide, and then we finish our class. All right, so management techniques to deal with the cross-cultural collaboration challenges. Okay, if you look at from here, how to collaborate or collaboration challenges is draw upon individual tolerance and self-control, and then trial and error. Okay, trial and error processes coupled with personal relationship. We must have the trial and error. And then setting up transnational culture. Okay, about the different culture, how to setting about this one. Okay, this is the management techniques to deal with this kind of the cross-cultural collaboration challenges, especially for the transnational. Okay. Next, we have the third chapter learning goals to recognize the varying roles of women around the world in the international management. Okay, if you look at from here, the management focus about the role of women in international management. So actually, if you look at in terms of the women in international management, there are limitations on opportunities for women for expatriate assignments. Okay, we have the example in Arab. Okay, Arab is one of the country. I think last 8 years or last 7 years, something like that. Actually, women can being a top management post. Okay, they can drive. Okay, they can do what we call it any guide task. Okay, especially for the top level. Okay, right now they change the policy. Okay, women can be a boss or top management. So these are the limitation. Depends on the country. Okay, they have the limitation sometimes. And then the United States, okay, Spain, Canada, and Finland lead the world in employing the largest numbers of women from entry level to senior management. These are the example of the country. They are have the good opportunity for women, okay, especially for the top management or level to entry level to senior management. And then women lag behind their male peers in pay and opportunities for advancement. Okay, sometimes they benefit or the policy of the company, they have a different what we call it policy level or policy scheme. Okay, for a guy, they got maybe extra than a women. So this is another things we must to look at it. Okay, sometimes we must being a fair and square, not just being because of the what we call it different gender. Okay, you can have something like the because of the women being a minority, so the women can got more. Okay, for example, yeah. And then 5% of the chief executive of the 600 companies surveyed were women. See, if you look at from the percentage, they are very niche, a very small percentage. Okay, this is based on the research. Okay, based on this the R&D they do, based on the 600 companies, only 5%. Okay, for the top management or the executive level and above, just from a woman gender. Right. So is it interesting? Because even in this class we have a lot of women rather than a guy. Am I right?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
How to make sure this girl, okay, to show their power. This is the time. Okay. This is actually issue. Okay. Maybe in Malaysia so far okay, but in certain country there are very limitation for the women. Okay, especially in Arab. All right. Next, we look at in terms of the role. Okay, next role of women in international management. North American women working as expatriate managers in countries around the world show that they are, for most part, successful. Okay, this is based on the research under the North American. And then the next one, women and minorities represent a significant resource for overseas assignments, and then whether as expatriate or as host country national. So this is another role of women, okay, in international management in terms of the different region or different country. Okay, next we have the role of women in international management. We have the example based on the Japan. Okay, opportunities for women are tight. This is another minority. Okay, another negative thing for women in Japan. Okay, we are very tied to cultural values and expectation regarding the role of women. So working married women equal loss of face for husband, and then women were only allowed clerical position, the simple position, not being a top manager or executive and above in Japan. So only 11% of Japanese women are in managerial position. And then Japan has gone as far as it can go with a social model that consists of men filling all the economic management and political roles. Okay. Sometimes even in Malaysia, we're facing this kind of the same problem, the same issues. Okay. Maybe because of our culture, okay, and maybe because of the religion. Sometimes the religion also being this kind of the issue, okay, because even in Muslim country, actually we must give more what we call it more priority for a guy, okay, especially if you look at in terms of the faraid, okay, faraid system and so on. This may be the factors, okay, this situation happen in certain country. Okay. Next, we move to the fourth. Okay, the second last chapter learning goals to understand the variation in host country labor relation system and the impact on the manager's job and effectiveness. So, if you look at from here, working within local labor relation system. So the impact of union on business. Okay, if you still remember about the union. Okay, so the union is very important for a certain things because they can bring the issue, especially for the staff issue, to the top management level. Okay, and then later on, if you take the IHRM subject, we learn in one topic, okay, in one chapter about the union. Okay, and then organize labor around the world. Okay, this is another labor relation system because they have the act and so on. And then convergent versus divergent in labor system. They used to remember, but the definition of the convergent or convert. What does mean convert? Anyone?
Change.
Yeah, change.
Change
The policy and so on. Okay, you convert. Okay, to change the policy. For example, that host country have a good policy, and then we follow them. Okay, we change the policy and then we use that policy. Yeah, that's for example for the convergence. Yeah, and then for divergence, divert. What does it mean divert? Guys, any idea? No?
I don't know, sir.
Divert. What does it mean divert? That's the words. Huh? Divert. What does it mean divert? No?
Skala.
Karma?
Skala.
Kala? Excuse me, come again. Pardon? Hello?
I don't know, sir.
Okay, the rest? You may try. What
It's
is
like
change
change to, but it's come back.
to but it's come back? What does it mean?
It means like it changed to, but it come back to us.
Come back to us.
Rewrote.
Re-
Rewrote.
Okay. Yes, correct. They have something like from maybe the direction from this kind of the direction, and then we change to another direction. That's divergent. We divert. Okay, divergence. Okay, maybe this is the usual one, and then we use another way. That's different. Convert, we totally change. Okay, this is in terms of the labor system. Okay, because different country they have a different labor law and labor system. All right. Thank you for the feedback. And then adapting to local industrial relation system. Okay, this is another part we must look at it in terms of the industrial or IR, industrial relation system, because different country they have a different industrial relation system. And then another part is about the NAFTA and labor relation in Mexico. So especially in terms of the trading bloc, okay, sometimes they have a different relation system, okay, especially for their members of country members, something like that. Okay, that's working within local labor relation system. So different country, they might have a different things. Okay, we go to the next one, the impact of union on business. Okay, if you look at from here, the labor relations and collective bargaining. Okay, do you still remember what does mean collective bargaining? We learned in chapter 1 or chapter 2, I think. Collective bargaining. What does mean? Guys,
Exchange, sir.
come again?
Exchange.
Exchange. What do you mean exchange? Collective bargaining. Okay, the words is from collect. What does mean collect?
Take.
Take.
Hmm.
Collect. For example,
Keep.
keep, and then we what we call it, and maybe in for example, in your team members, okay, for the assignment, who being a collect for the task for each task, and then you submit to me. That we call it collect. Okay, bargaining means bargain. The words from bargain. What does mean bargain?
Negotiate.
Negotiate or discuss
Negotiate.
correctly. So there have they something like the issue for the staff, for example, and then we use that person or that union to collect all the negotiation, and then they bring the issue to the top management. So you as a student of the UniKL, you have the SRC. So SRC is being a one of the union to collect the bargaining and issues from the student, and then they bring to the top management of the UniKL. That example. Okay, easy way how to understand about the collective bargaining. Okay, that's why labor relations or union very, very important. Okay, that's why we must have the SRC, Student Representative Council. They're trying to bring any issues from the student viewpoints. Okay, and then the process through which manager and workers determine their workplace relationship. Okay, and then the three dimension to consider is about the participation of labor in firm affairs, and then the role and impact of unions. Okay, what are the role of the each union, and then human resource policies. Okay, under the HR, the policies also they are very important. They must look at it. And then the next one is labor relation constraint. What are the constraint? Which levels set by union? Okay, that's why even in Malaysia right now, in our what we call it, in our what we call it, that one, Dewan Persidangan tu kita panggil apa in English? Oh my god, guys, Dewan Persidangan. All the
Parliament.
in parliament, yes, the parliament. Okay, they try to increase, okay, the minimum payment of the salary in Malaysia right now. Currently, 1,200. So they try to increase another 200. So 1,400. So right now they try to what we call it, improve this kind of the policy. Okay, about the wage level. So this is about the labor relation constraint. Sometimes maybe based on that situation only they got only 20 out of 50 say yes. So of course that what we call it, that suggestion not approved. So if in all the members say yes to that one, then they become another policies. So this is about the wage level set by union, also they become a constraint. Okay, and the limits on the firm ability to vary employment level, because they have a different level of the employment, and a limitation on the global integration of operations. So this is another constraint happen, especially for the labor relations. Okay, so far so good.
Good, sir.
Good.
Sir.
Sir.
All right, so we have another 6 slide, and then we finish our class. All right, so organized labor around the world. Okay, union membership is in decline in the US, and then industrial, craft, conglomerate, and general unions. And then labor unions must be understood within their given contextual environment. Okay, so if you look at from here, the percentage of union membership in industrialized countries has declined over the last decade. So particularly in Europe, okay, thought it does remain quite high overall, especially in Italy and the UK. So there are several reasons for this decline. So the reason is the increase in white collar and service workers, a rising proportion of part-time and temporary workers, and the offshoring of jobs, and reduced belief in union by younger workers. So traditional union structure actually in Western industrialized societies have been industrial unions. So representing all employees in a specific industry, and craft union based on certain occupational skills. So more recently, the structure has been conglomerate union, and which cut across industries, and general union, which are open to most employees within a country. So in the US, most unions are national and represent specific groups of workers. So alternatively, in Japan, it is common for a union to represent all workers in a company. So different countries, they have a different function of the union actually. So labor relation system across countries must be understood relative to their context, such as in terms of government regulation, economic factors, technological issues, and the influence of religious organization. Okay, so another example, collective bargaining in the US refer to negotiation between a labor union local and management, and the resulting the details agreements. And meanwhile, in Europe, the collective bargaining takes place between the employer organization and the trade union at the industry level. So there are also differences in resulting agreements. And then in the US, agreement are usually written and legally binding. Okay, and then in Britain, France, and Italy, agreement are often informal and verbal. See the difference in terms of the agreement, in terms of the culture, in terms of the certain things about the labor around or organized labor around the world. Okay, so next we have the labor system, convergence in labor system and divergence. Okay, we have already what we call it, know what the definition, different about the convert and then divert. Okay, so for the convergence in labor system, we have forces for convergent or convert. Global competitiveness. So because of the competitive with the other competitor, so we must to convert the process or the system. And then political change, okay, we must to convert. And then new market economies, okay, right now because of the pandemic situation, so they might have a new market economies and so on, so they might to convert the system and so on. And then another forces is because of the free trade zone. Okay, when we talk about free trade zone, they have a different tax, they have a different tax and so on. So they must to convert. Okay, so that's for the convergence. And then for the divergence in labor system, competition for jobs. Okay, and then collective bargaining methods. So what kind of the method they use? So they have the divergence. And then the role of political ideology, overall social structure, and history of industrial practices. Okay, that's different for the labor system, either convergent or divergence. Okay, so far so good. Are you still with me?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Good.
sir.
Another 4 slide, yeah. All right, next, adapting to local industrial relation system. To how to adapt. Sorry. Okay, considerable pressure for MNC to adapt their practices largely to the tradition of national industrial relation system. Okay, this is normally the adoption because of the traditional, okay, or tradition. And then MNC are subject to local and country regulation and practices So it depends on the local and country regulation. So they have a different, sometimes because of different country, they have a different parcel. And then considerable gaps exist between the labor law and the enforcement of those law. And then in particular in less developed countries. So they have a different in terms of this kind of the industrial relation system. Okay, so how to adapt about this. Then for NAFTA and labor relation in Mexico, so if you look at from here, labor issues are subject to review under NAFTA. So hiring Mexican national for 90% of workforce. Okay, the rest, another 10% maybe come from outside, from others country. This is about policy. Okay, NAFTA policy. And then workers believe MNC use blacklist, intimidation, and economic pressure to oppose union organization. So MNC violate labor rights and cooperate with pro-government labor leaders. So this is about the fifth part for the under the NAFTA and labor relation in Mexico based on their situation. Okay, the final one before we conclude, okay, before we summarize, comparative management level, labor relation in Germany, this happened in German, co-determination law, okay, Miss Bastimang, okay, they call, I think, unlucky tonight we don't have the German, our German student, Miss Nguyen. So if Miss Nguyen here, maybe they can pronounce this one, Mit Bastimang, I think. Okay, the co-determination law in English. Actually, this is coming under pressure, and then Union Work Council are co-managers, and the German union actually are increasingly willing to make concessions, and termination costs are very high, and then the German model holds that competition should not be based on cost, and conflicting opinions over the value of co-determination. Okay. Any question before I conclude this chapter?
No,
Okay.
sir.
No question?
No, sir.
Right. So if no question, as a conclusion for this chapter, chapter 10, expatriate career management necessitates plans for retention during or after assignments. Okay, we must look at in terms of this one, especially for their program. The expatriate spouse plays a crucial role, and then global management team offer greater opportunities for competition, and then virtual global teams enable cost-effective rapid knowledge sharing and collaboration, and then women represent an underutilized resource, and the last and the final one, labor relation environment, system processes vary around the world. They have different things. Okay, so far so good.
Good, sir.
All right.
Good, sir.
Okay, nice. So if good, are you ready for your attendance?
Yes, sir. Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Yes, sir.
It is.
Sir.
All right. Thank you for the feedback. Wait, yeah. We start 8:30. 8:30, 9:30, 10:30, 11:30. Okay, we start with Ashrul Hakim.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Next, Stephanie.
Yes, sir.
Dayang Nur Fitra.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Next, Fatin Nurhanani.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Next, Iman Shahira.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Next, Lukman Adam.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Ahmad Ramzan.
Yes, sir.
Muhammad.
Yes, sir.
Next, Muhammad Azwar.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Next, Muhammad Nabil. Muhammad Nabil bin Safaruddin Khamis. Last call from Muhammad Nabil.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Miss Ngunyin absent. Okay, next, Nurdiana Shakira.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Next, Nur Alia Shahira.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Next, Nur Fina Nadirah. Nur Afina.
sir.
Thank you. Next, Nur Alia Husna.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Next, Nur Danisha.
Present, sir.
Next, Nur Fariha Iman.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Next, Nur Imanina.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Next, Nur Shamila.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Next, Nur Tasnim.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Next, Nurul Aisyah. Nurul Aisyah binti Karya. Last call for Nurul Aisyah. Nurul Aisyah, are you okay? Okay, I heard you. Okay, Nurul Rahmat.
Present, sir.
Thank you. Next, Nurul Zakira.
Yes, sir.
Next, Regina Arif.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Next, Roy Azmi.
Yes, sir.
Next, Siti Nur Shazwani, sorry. Siti Nur Shazwani binti Awang. Last call for Siti Nur.
sir.
Okay, thank you. And then the final person, Zahirul Khuzairi.
Yes, sir. Ada, sir.
Ya, ada Okay, okay, lepas ni boleh jaga mak Okay, Zahirul.
Ada dengan mak saya, sir.
Oh, Alhamdulillah. Okay, salam kat mak. Okay.
Boleh, sir.
Alright, so that's all for tonight. As I promised to you guys, just 1.5 hours.
Sir,
Yes. Who's that?
have you called my name? Aiman.
Done. And then you just say yes.
Oh, yes.
Muhammad Aiman.
Sebab saya tengah lag tadi.
I
Yeah.
your
Aiman.
voice. I put in
Okay,
F10. Okay, no
Right.
problem.
Thank you, sir.
So for tonight, Miss Ngunyin only absent because Miss Ngunyin got something to do. Okay, maybe they're working. All right, so thank you very much for tonight, guys. If you have any question, please use our WhatsApp group. And stay safe. Okay, and that's all for tonight. Thank you very much. See you on next week, inshallah, for the last class.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Stay safe, sir.
Thank
Good
you,
night.
Thank you so much, sir. Take
Good
Bye,
care.
sir.
Thank you,
Thank you,
sir.
sir. Assalamualaikum.
Salam.
Sir,
Yes, Dayang.
Uh,
Apa
can
dia?
you attendance for the last time class?
Oh yeah, I forgot. Luckily you remind me. Okay, yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Welcome. Thank you so much. Okay.